Community Center, we always start with the Quranic recitation. So we've got two Muslim Community Center students, Ibrahim Muhammad and Hamza Chaudhry.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا أوحينا إليك كما أوحينا إلى نوح والنبيين من بعده وأوحينا إلى إبراهيم وإسماعيل وإسحاق ويعقوب والأسباط وعيسى وأيوب ويونس وهارون وسليمان وآتينا داود زبورا ورسلا قد قصصناهم عليك من قبل ورسلا لم نقصصهم عليك وكلم الله موسى تكليما رسلا مبشرين ومنذرين لئلا يكون للناس على الله حجة بعد الرسل وكان الله عزيزا حكيما لكن الله يشهد بما أنزله بعلمه والملائكة يشهدون وكفى بالله شهيدا صدق الله العظيم.
As we had inspired Noah and the prophets after him, and we inspired Abraham and Ishmael and Isaac and Jacob and the patriarchs, and Jesus and Job and Jonah and Aaron and Solomon, and we gave David the Psalms.
So once again, Assalamu alaikum, welcome, and shalom. Thank you so much for coming out here today to the Muslim Community Center. And thank you and welcome to the Hands of Peace guests and the special evening that we have tonight of Hanukkah. So I wanted to say Happy Hanukkah to all of our Jewish friends that are observing Hanukkah. Happy Hanukkah. That was Hamza and Ibrahim from the Muslim Community Center Academy. They're 8th grade students, and a little bit about Muslim Community Center. So there's 3 actual locations. There's one located in Chicago on Elston Street, which was purchased in 1969. This location is the 2nd location, and it was purchased in 1989. And the 3rd location is where the 2 boys go to school. It was just purchased about 3 years ago. So the school actually has about 650 students all the way from preschool, and they just started freshman year of high school. So it's growing. With MCC, I also want to say thank you to all the volunteers. You saw all those young boys and girls taking time out of their school night, welcoming everyone. So I want to say thank you to the volunteers. We've got a lot of moms and dads that helped set up the snacks, along with Hands' piece also providing us snacks. Thank you so much. At our Interfaith and Outreach Committee, we do very monthly, timely events. We've done gun violence in Chicago and how does our faith work to help eliminate those types of situations. We've done the internment camp situation for the Japanese Americans, for the Holocaust survivors, and what field do we have right now. We also did a topic recently about racism within Islam and how important it is for us to understand anti-Muslim sentiment that we have in our mosques. So we do a lot of timely topics and topics that are sometimes very difficult to discuss, but that's important for us to have those difficult conversations. And I think about a lot of times when we plan these events, we use Brian Stevenson's 4 agents of change and how each one of us are use those 4 agents of change. So number 1, Brian Stevenson tells us about proximity, getting close to the problem. Number 2, he says if you're an agent of change, change the narrative. Make sure that you're working hard to change that narrative. Number 3 is making sure that there's hope. We're giving hope to others that are in that difficult situation, as well as creating hope for ourselves. And the last part, which we are doing all the time, and which I really appreciate everyone being here, is we're getting comfortable being uncomfortable. So a lot of the topics we're talking about tonight or in the past, we are talking about difficult topics. So thank you for getting comfortable getting uncomfortable. I want to also thank so much to Rick, the Executive Director of Hands of Peace. Rick and I had a discussion about maybe 2.5 months ago to really think about, is this a topic we want to bring to MCC and how we can do it. So I'm going to introduce Rick Rosenfeld, the Executive Director of Hands of Peace, and welcome him to the podium. And thank you so much for bringing this to MCC, Rick.
Thank you, Dilnaz, and here with me tonight, Darlene Pico and Brian Harris from the Hands of Peace staff, who helped us organize this evening. I think what I'm particularly excited about tonight is this is really the intersection of three communities. It's the Muslim Community Center, it's Hands of Peace, and it's Americans for a Vibrant Palestinian Economy. The more we talk, the more we learn. The more we learn, the more barriers fall down, and the more we get comfortable with the other. For me, this is my 4th visit to MCC, and I remember my first visit, I felt very stressed and nervous, and am I going to do something wrong, and am I going to offend my hosts? And with each additional visit, I feel more and more comfortable just walking in and conversing and meeting people, and I think that's the graciousness of this community. I hope that those of you from the MCC community get a chance to meet some of the Hands of Peace folks and the AVPE folks this evening and build that comfort level as well, because this is where we need to be as not just Chicago, not just a country, but as humans, as humanity. What Hands of Peace does as an organization, it's been around since 2003 here in the North Suburbs. It's an international program that brings Israelis, Palestinians, and Americans together in Glenview each summer for 3 weeks. For the Israelis and the Palestinians, it's an opportunity to meet the other for the first time. Americans come and they listen and share their perspectives and learn, and it's truly an amazing opportunity. For many of our American participants, most of them come from the North Suburbs, but some come from the East Coast, West Coast of the United States. And what we like to share with them is the idea that you, right here in your own backyard, have an international program that is focused on peace and on common humanity. We focus and we work with the teens to empower them to find their voice and to then use their voices, raise their voices as leaders of change of the next generation. And we do focus on this as common humanity, recognizing that every Palestinian, every Israeli, and every American, every Muslim, every Christian, every Jew, starts from the same baseline. We're all human. We all are created equal and need to find that commonality, that equality in life, and we work towards helping our young people figure that out. So that's a little bit of background on Hands of Peace. There's some literature out in the lobby that we hope that you take with you. What I'd like to inspire the MCC and the AVPE communities with is the concept of there are different ways to get involved in Hands of Peace. So if you are a teenager or you have a teenager at home, consider having them take a look at Hands of Peace as a program for the summer. Our sweet spot, I would say, is after 10th grade, but we also have after some of our participants are after 11th grade or sometimes after 9th grade. So take a look at that. It's really a good chance of learning something very complicated in a very loving and caring environment. Also, for those of you who might be interested in hosting a teen from overseas, there are, every year, many of our Palestinian teens express an interest in staying with Muslim families. We don't have a broad network of Muslim families that would consider hosting a Palestinian teen for 3 weeks. So if that's something that might work with you, let us know. Outreach to us with that. We first at Hands of Peace came in contact with Americans for a Vibrant Palestinian Economy about 3 years ago. Ed Thompson, who's here tonight, lives up in the North Suburbs and is co-founder of the organization with a colleague of his in Palestine. And Ed and I met. It was actually the first meeting that I was involved in after I became executive director at Hands of Peace. Ed and I would touch base from time to time. We ran into each other, I wasn't expecting it, in Ramallah, which was interesting, and had a chance to have coffee with a colleague of his. And we've talked about the parallel paths that our organizations are on. Laila Casey has joined Ed's team as the American Operations Officer, and she is here and as our presenter tonight. But we had a chance a couple of months ago to get together and talk about, well, what can we do? How can we share the message of AVP with the Hands of Peace community? We try from an education perspective to bring lots of different information from a lot of different perspectives. Sometimes it's Palestinian focused, sometimes Israeli focused, sometimes it's focused on one religion or another, sometimes it's focused on the conflict. So tonight we're going to be learning about challenges of the Palestinian business economy and how Palestinian companies, through the auspices of AVPE, are working together to build bridges to the United States. So please help me welcome Laila Casey.
Hi, everyone. So I want to start by thanking everyone, of course. Thank you to Hands of Peace for, can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah. It's not
Can you put it up a little bit? No, I think it's on, I just think it needs to go up. There we go. Is that better? Yeah. Okay. So thank you to Hands of Peace for inviting us to come, and of course thank you to MCC for hosting us. We're excited to be here. We're excited to be sharing the work of AVP and what we're doing. So I joined Americans for a Vibrant Palestinian Economy, which is kind of a tongue twister of a name, so I'm just going to say AVPE from now on, in April of this year. So I'm still new to the team, but I do feel quite like I've gotten my feet wet now and I know what's going on. I know Sam Bahor, who's the other co-founder and director of ABBs from Palestine. I'll tell you guys a little bit about myself. I grew up in Madison, Wisconsin, so not too far from here. My father is originally from the Middle East. He's from a country called Bahrain. It's a very tiny country in the, off the east coast of Saudi Arabia in the Persian Gulf. And my mother is from Greensburg, Indiana, so small town southern Indiana, so you can't get much more different than that. And I lived in the US most of my life. I grew up in Madison, Wisconsin most of my life. You know, I was a university student when the Second Intifada started. I was a university student when 9/11 happened. And, you know, it just became very important. Palestine became a very important issue to me as an Arab American. I ended up moving to Palestine in 2003 for a job with the UNDP, United Nations Development Program. And I think I thought I'd be there for like a year or two, and then ended up meeting my husband, marrying, and staying there for 12 years. So I lived in Palestine for 12 years, mostly in Bethlehem. I was involved in a lot of different initiatives over the years, one of which was establishing the first ever Palestinian Fair Trade Olive Oil Company. And I'll get into a little bit more about that later. And I also worked with a lot of other issues in development like media, agriculture, women, and children. So I have a lot of vast experience over the years in working in international development in Palestine. And I moved back to the US 3 years ago, and I've been living in Madison ever since. So ABP is a great fit for me. When I sort of reached out to Sam when I knew I was moving to the US and said, what do you got for me, Sam? He sort of led me to ABP, and it eventually turned into an opportunity for me to join the team. And it's a really, really good fit for me. So switching on to, so AVPE was founded on the basic premise that positive investment can basically, you know, breed a better hope for the future. We want to build lasting relationships and bridges between Americans and Palestinians. And we want to build a vibrant economy so that now and in the future, when Palestine is free one day, there is a vibrant, diverse economy that can support the Palestinian people. And so that's kind of the basic premise that AVP was founded on. And you know, in the meantime, every business relationship that we can create, every business transaction that we can help support, plants a seed for the future and also gives Palestinians hope for the future as well. I'm going to assume that this crowd has a slight background within the conflict, otherwise you probably wouldn't be here. So I'm not really going to get into the conflict. But if people have questions as I'm talking, feel free to raise your hand. I also am going to kind of interact with you guys while this is going on, because I know everybody's either been at school or at work, and I want everybody to stay awake and not be bored. So I'll be talking to you, and feel free to talk back to me. So I want to ask the crowd, I'll start right away, ask the crowd sort of what images do you think of when you think of Palestinians and Palestine? What comes to mind?
Rock throwing.
Rock throwing, right? Okay, right. Anybody else?
Resilience.
Resilience, good. That's a good one, a very good one.
Fences.
Fences, yeah, security walls, right? I mean, I'm going to come out and say it too, right? Terrorists. A lot of people think of that when they think of Palestinians. Anybody else?
Occupation.
Occupation.
Right of return.
Right of return. So lots of things. Yep.
Hospitality.
Hospitality, yes. If you've ever been to Palestine, you know they're very, very welcoming people. So yeah, I mean, these are the images that we all think of mostly. I think a lot of people also think of it as underdeveloped, developing country, villagers. So at ABPE, we also want you to think of these kind of images when you think of Palestine. So what do you see here? You see, this is a picture of Rawabi. Has anybody heard of Rawabi before? Yeah, it's the first kind of planned community that was built as a suburb of Ramallah. Ramallah is the kind of big governmental and economic hub in the West Bank, and Rawabi is the first kind of planned Palestinian community that was built as a suburb. So kind of like we're in the northern suburbs of Chicago, this is like the northern suburbs of Ramallah. And so a lot of people don't think about this kind of high-level construction going on, but well-planned communities, and sort of really, you know, construction and development going on within the Palestinian world. The other picture you see is a very delicious, I wish we had samples to share with you, but we've run out, a Palestinian company called El Hijaz. They make chocolate. They're based in Anapta, which is a village outside of Nablus, and they make a very delicious chocolate-covered, chocolate-covered date with an almond inside. But as you can see, the packaging is very sophisticated. Now it's right now sold mostly throughout the Middle East, but they are looking to kind of enter the US market, and ABP is trying to help them do that. So that is one of the things that we do. So at ABP, we want you to think about all those other things that you mentioned, but we also want you to think about this other side of Palestine, that there is a vibrant economy there, that we're trying to support that, and we're really trying to build those bridges to support that vibrant economy. So this is our vision and our mission. Does anybody want to read our vision for us real quick? Come on, one of the teenagers out there, raise your hand and read it for us. Okay, go for it.
The vision?
Yep.
Americans and Palestinians freely doing business together.
Right, so pretty simple. We want to support as much as we can open trade, business, relations between Americans and Palestinians. And how do we get there? We get there through our mission. Our mission is building bridges between those people. So we really, that's kind of our goal at ABPE, and there are lots of ways that you can support Palestine, and this is just one of them, and this is just one of the efforts that are going on to support a free and independent Palestine in the future, but this is a very important one. After living there for 12 years, I can tell you that it's very important, like for every American, it's very important for every Palestinian to have a good job that they can raise their family with, that they can have respect and dignity and be able to take care of themselves. There is a lot of donor money thrown into Palestine, but most Palestinians would prefer to have their own job where they can raise their family, get married, and take care of themselves. And I think that's a very common want and desire, as is for plenty of families in America as well. So how do we do this? We're an Illinois-based nonprofit. We have our co-founder and director here, Ed Thompson. He is based in Glenview, and so that's kind of where our Chicago pull is. We don't actually have a physical office anywhere. We're kind of a virtual office. We do have an address and an office that we can use if need to, but we don't have any bricks and mortar. We're a very low sort of overhead organization, and we like that. So, like I said, I'm based in Madison, and we have also the other co-founder and director in Palestine, whose name is Sam Bahour, and then we have a Palestine operations officer on the ground there as well. So she's kind of my counterpart, and then Ed is sort of Ed's counterpart in Palestine. So we're really just an army of four, and we get a lot done with the four of us. So how do we do this, and what do we do? We do a lot of different things. Palestinian companies come to us for support, and more recently we've actually had American companies start coming to us and say, we want to do business with Palestine, can you help us? Which is a great trend to see and something that we really want to support. For me, I mean, one of the reasons that I love what ABPE does is because it really moves us away from the donor dependency that we have seen over the years in Palestine. You know, there's so much money poured into Palestine through various donor agencies, and that can be very risky. I'll give you 2 examples. One, I lived in Palestine in 2006 when they elected Hamas as the government, and you know, without getting too much into the Palestinian politics, you know, having that election for Hamas was not so much an election for extremism as it was an election against the years of corruption that Palestinians had seen with the Fatah government. So, you know, it was kind of like a rejection of what was already, and the only other big party that existed was Hamas. And then the international community condemned Palestine as a result of this and withdrew a lot of donor money. Most countries followed suit. America started and most countries followed suit. And to watch the destruction of the Palestinian community as a result of that donor money being withdrawn from Palestine was a really depressing thing to watch. You know, so there was 2 ways that happened. One is that any donor money that went straight to the PA was cut off. I don't know the exact percentage, but a large percentage of the Palestinian population is employed by the Palestinian Authority. And the other probably second biggest industry after the Palestinian Authority in terms of employers is the nonprofit world, right? Development agencies that do various work throughout the West Bank and Gaza. And so those agencies were also hurt. Their funding was also withdrawn. And so you had a very large percentage of the Palestinian society with basically no income suddenly. And eventually, it was this very depressing sort of snowball effect where, you know, families could buy on credit at the local supermarket because it's a very communal society, people trust each other. People thought this wasn't gonna last for that long, but eventually, if everybody buys on credit, then the supermarket has to buy on credit because they don't have any money to resupply their stocks, and then eventually supermarkets couldn't buy on credit anymore. And shelves were literally empty in the supermarkets, and it was a really, really depressing sort of chain of events that you could just see happen. And for me, as an outsider who had been living there for a while, I thought, wow, if Palestinians don't get off this drug of donor dependency, they will never have hope for the future. They will never be able to get out of this kind of cycle. And the second example is very current. We just got today, actually, an email from somebody who wanted to know if AVPE could think of any project or company that we could help direct all these civil engineers to, because USAID has now, I think everybody knows, sort of pulled almost all of their funding out of the West Bank and Gaza, which means that there's a lot of civil engineers who used to work for USAID who are now unemployed. And they speak English well, and they're very competent, and sort of what do we do with this group of Palestinian civil engineers who now all find themselves unemployed. And so those are two examples of how donor dependency can really cripple an economy, and it's a very tenuous situation for Palestinians to be in, where they have to depend on that kind of funding in order to survive. And so why I think AVPE is so important is because we really are working to move away from that and create Palestinian industries that can survive despite the American government making a decision to withdraw their funds from Palestine. So what are the various services that we offer? As I said, most of the time we have Palestinian companies approaching us and asking for our support with various things. At AVP, we're very open. We'll kind of take each case as it comes. So when a company may approach us and say, I need you to help us do this, and we'll sort of look at the whole thing and decide, is this something that we can do or not? So I'll give you a couple examples, and if you guys notice on your table, there's at least 2 copies on your table that have sort of a list of current projects that we're working on, and it'll just give you an idea. And one of the things that I always like to say about AVP is that we're only as strong as our network. And so the way that we work is, a Palestinian company might come to us and say, I need help. So right now, we have one of the largest Palestinian pharmaceutical industries companies that has come to us, Beit Jala Pharmaceutical. And they would very much like to figure out if it's feasible and how to enter the US generic drug market. And so AVP sets our wheels in motion. We start reaching out to our contacts. We start investigating if this is something that we think we can help them with. What they've asked us to do very specifically is sort of vet and find a few consulting companies that can do a very in-depth market analysis for them, not just to see where they might enter the market, but what are the steps that they need to do so. And so that's what we're doing right now. We're working with that company. We have reached out to our network. We've sent out an email blast to our network, and I get, sort of responses from people. And so the power of ABP is really how many people know about our work, and sort of we send out these calls to action. Do you know anybody in the pharmaceutical industry? And then I start getting information and I follow up on those leads, basically. So I like to say at ABP, we are as strong as our network, and the more we can share about the work that we're doing, the more we can grow that network, and therefore the influence that we have and the ability to help Palestinian companies. I mentioned El Hijaz before, which was the chocolate company that I showed you guys pictures of. They've also asked us to help them enter the US market. They'd like to find a distributor here in the US for the one product that they have. They have many products, and they sell a lot throughout the Middle East, but they have one product that's sort of the higher end, the one I mentioned, the chocolate cover date with an almond inside. That's sort of higher end fancy, so could we help them find a distributor here in the US? So there was a sweets and snacks expo that Ed went to here in the Chicago area, sort of got an idea, took some pictures, gave them ideas of what packaging looks like. So there's so many ways that we can help these companies, and each order, as I said, is very unique and specific to that specific company and what it is that they might need. And at ABPE, we try the best we can for the companies that come to us to offer our network to them, to provide resources in order to get them accomplish what they want to accomplish. We did also recently, like as I mentioned before, see an increase in US-based companies that want to do business with Palestine. So we've recently had a couple of furniture companies here in the US, one who deals with furniture made from recycled or repurposed wood or metal, and another one who just is a regular furniture importer and wants to import furniture from Palestine. And so then we send Rima, our Palestine operations officer in Palestine, we send her off to sort of look for some of these companies and sort of vet them and meet with them, and then we come back to our American companies. So as you can see, we have a wide variety of projects that we work on, and we never know exactly what's going to come our way, but we always try and take each project as it comes and use our network to find the resources that those companies need to make whatever their request is successful. So, the three kind of areas of service that we do is sort of offer business and US market advice, also offer trade show advice, and we have, within the case of El Hijaz also, the chocolate company, placed their samples in front of many people. We actually had sort of like sampling a taste test done and got some feedback from a candy company in terms of where the quality was, what the taste was, and this is very useful, and this is something they can use when they're approaching possible distributors and saying, we've had this taste tested in the US, and this was the response that we had. So again, very different requests from different companies, but we try and take it as each request as they come and help in any way we can. So what challenges do Palestinian business people face when doing business with Americans? So anybody who wants to start a business and run a successful business faces challenges, right? You've got to get startup capital, you've got to know how to do sustainable growth, there's plenty of obstacles that come. I think any entrepreneur knows that, or anybody who runs their own company knows that there's a lot of struggles. So Palestinian companies face that just like any company anywhere in the world. But on top of that, they face a lot of other things. So one is severe restrictions on movement of people and goods. So checkpoints, curfews, separate roads. I'm sure most people know about the system of occupation that exists in the West Bank and Gaza. Gaza is a little bit separate, so I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But there's also ways that Israel creates legal systems of discrimination for Palestinians. So if you're a Palestinian company and you want to export any goods, you are forced to go through an Israeli company, which means you have higher costs, you have extra security checks. It also means that you don't have control over when your product's going to be delivered. Is it going to sit in the port for a while? Are there going to be extra security checks? Extensive security checks on goods from the West Bank and Gaza can slow down trade. If you're not a reliable business partner, if you can't tell your partner in America when you're going to be able to deliver them your goods, they're probably not going to do business with you. And so that makes doing business very difficult. There's also random sampling of security checks, which very often ends up damaging the cargo or the goods that are trying to be exported. So these are very specific challenges that Palestinian companies face and make it very hard for them to do business with any sort of reliability or regularity. We work with one organization called the Bethlehem Fair Trade Association, and they work with a lot of small artisan farmers to sort of olive wood carving, ceramics, any sort of the traditional crafts. And they're a fair trade organization. And they've had numerous shipments sent out, and everything arrives broken. And it's not from the shipping, because they do by sea and they use a clearing agency. It's because their goods have been checked for security checks, and a lot of things have been broken because those security checks have not been done in a way that protects the cargo. So again, if you send, what do you do then? If you're a Palestinian company and you've sent an entire order to a US fair trade company and everything arrives broken, do you require that US fair trade company to pay for that? Do you reimburse them? Do you break that relationship with them based on the fact that they aren't going to be very happy with you? So again, unique challenges that Palestinian companies face. Gaza is a whole other story. I think most people here probably know about the blockade on Gaza. It's been going on for more than 10 years now. Pretty much movement of goods and people in and out of Gaza is almost at a complete halt stop. You know, there's a lot of things, I think the latest, you know, there's a lot of things that are on the dual purpose list, and so things that are denied access into entry into Gaza, and it makes it very difficult to run any sort of business with any sort of regularity. I'm sure people also know that there's very little electricity, maybe 4 hours a day for people. So how do you run a business when you only have electricity for 4 hours a day? So the Gaza situation is sort of more dire, much harder, and as a result, you know, one of the things that's always amazed me about Palestinians is their resilience, their perseverance, their we're going to find a way kind of attitude. And so there's a lot of IT and sort of HR services. There's the Gaza Geeks. You know, there's a lot of ways that Gazans have found to export their services rather than their goods because they can't physically get goods out of Gaza. And so, you know, that's a very creative way when you're faced with a very bad situation to figure out how am I still going to, you know, support my family, create a livelihood. And so there's lots of IT, as I said, IT, HR, and also the Gaza Geeks, which is a favorite of mine, that do really interesting things despite a very, very difficult situation in the Gaza Strip. So what can be done today to change this reality? So if you also see on your, we're going to break up in groups in a little bit and sort of have some smaller discussions and maybe talk about some of these, and I'll kind of walk around and sit with tables and talk to. But there are lots of things that Israel could do today that would not threaten their security in any sort of way, that would help increase the economic trade and activity between America and Palestinians. So they can release the 4G frequencies, which means that Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza can have access. You know how we're all on our phones all the time, right? A lot of business gets done on your phones, and if you're stuck at a checkpoint, you can get your email done if you've got that 4G access, right? So, you know, again, I feel like, you know, we're not trying to make the occupation a reality that's here to stay, but we are trying to acknowledge that reality and figure out ways that life can continue to exist and an economy can grow and people can have lives where they support their families and they have a hope for the future. And so releasing the 4G frequencies in the West Bank and Gaza is an immediate thing that Israel could do that would not threaten their security in any sort of way, and would really allow for business to work in a lot easier of a way. They keep the crossings in and out of Gaza and the West Bank open for business. I mean, this was a recommendation made by the World Bank, forget the crossing, forget the people moving back and forth, which is something I support as well. But I mean, even just to keep it open for trade and for business would be a huge improvement from where we are right now. To stop the extensive security checks within the West Bank. So if you're trading, even just to get things from the northern West Bank to the southern West Bank, you have to go through many checkpoints, sometimes excessive security checks. They have the system where you have to actually sometimes unload your goods from one truck to another because there's certain trucks they won't let through certain checkpoints. And so this causes unnecessary cost, it slows down trade, it again makes trade unreliable. And there's no point in doing this from a Palestinian area to a Palestinian area. Allow postal mail packages to reach Palestinian posts. So I lived there, like I said, for 12 years. And at, you know, at one point I went and got a P.O. box in Beit Jala and, you know, told my family, I have a P.O. box now, you can mail me things. And of course nothing ever got to me. So eventually I abandoned that and went and got a P.O. box in Jerusalem. And then I got everything that I needed. And it was funny because very recently, in August of this year, I read an article online about how Israel had dumped 10 tons of mail from the stuff that they'd had from 2010, and I remember reading the article thinking, oh, there's probably mail in there for me. That's probably some of my mail. I wonder if I could get it. So, you know, again, it's such a very simple, basic thing. But if you can imagine if you could never receive or send any mail with any sort of reliability, how crippling that would be for a business. And so it's another very simple thing that Israel could do right now today that would not you know, threaten their security in any sort of way. You could increase the number of vehicles, the load capacity, the cargo loading and unloading, the operating of King Hussein Bridge. So King Hussein Bridge is the crossing point between the West Bank and Jordan, which would allow a lot easier of trade between Palestine and the rest of the Middle East. Also, I mean, it could be a route where Palestinians send things to America as well. There's open free trade between Jordan and America, and if Palestinians could get their goods to Jordan, it would be much easier to get it to America. Stop restrictions on shipments through cargo crossings in the occupied territories into Israel. So right now there's limited working hours, there's only a certain number of trucks that can go through on certain days, and there's very strict security regulations. So, you know, a lot of these things you kind of look at and you think, what is the purpose of them? If they don't really truly have a security purpose, it seems to me at least that the purpose is to cripple the Palestinian economy. Which seems very counterproductive to me, because I would think if you are trying to make peace with somebody, you want to have a population that is content and happy and also wants to make peace, and not angry and hopeless and not looking that they have any hope for the future. There's a lot of Palestinian businesses who want to do business and build factories and whatnot in Area C, but all of that has been halted for many, many years. It's nearly impossible to get permission to build anything in Area C. And so, you know, that's another thing that Israel could start granting approval to Palestinian businesses to do just that, to build factories. And that also is a recommendation by the World Bank. And then lastly, that allow Palestinian clearing agents to go through directly to Israeli ports, so not having to have this Israeli middleman, which is actually not just an extra cost for Palestinians, but if there's ever a dispute between the Israeli clearing agency and the Palestinian company, or the Palestinian clearing agency and the Israeli clearing agency, there is pretty much zero recourse that Palestinian companies have to take them to court. So let's say something is ruined, something is lost. There is no recourse that they have when there's this Israeli partner in the middle, because they can't take them to there's no court they can take them to and say, they did this with my business, or they ruined this. And so again, it just makes running businesses with any sort of reliability really, really difficult. And again, I'd like to stress that in my opinion, all of these measures could be taken without threatening the security of Israel. And so, you know, those are kind of the things that could be done today or tomorrow that would make doing business with Palestine and America much easier. We're gonna break up into groups now. You can follow us on social media, and I would encourage everybody to sign up for our email list. We do not inundate you with emails. Like I said, I've been on board since April, and I think we've only sent out 4, maybe 5 emails. So not inundating you with emails, and a lot of them are very specific calls to action. So like I mentioned about the Beit Jala pharmaceutical. We also sent a call to action when the Bethlehem Fair Trade Artisans was coming here to America, and we wanted to ask if anybody had contact with fair trade outlets. So they're usually very specific calls to action, and even if you have a contact for us, you forward it on to us, and if you don't, you delete the email. So I encourage everyone to go to our website and sign up for our email list. It's a really great way to learn about what it is that we're doing. And again, ABP is as strong as the network that we can build. So if you know somebody who can help a Palestinian company get that contact that they need to figure out how to enter the generic drug market or how to find a distributor for their chocolate product, that can be really helpful. Doing business with Palestine is not easy. It's not going to be regular, and it's not going to be, what you're doing business as usual. So having those contacts and people who are sympathetic and want to do business with Palestine is very key. And that's why our network and growing our network is so important. So we're gonna break up into groups. We've got questions on the table. I think I have 3 questions laid out. People can feel free to choose one and talk about one, or to talk about all 3. I think we're gonna get back together as a group and then maybe have each table present an answer to one question. Is that okay with you? Yeah. And then I'll rotate around too and sort of talk to you guys, and hopefully we'll come up with some really good ideas about how we can support.
15 minutes for this.
Sure. Yeah. So that's 15 minutes. And then we'll come back, and I have one more slide at the end that sort of talks about some action items and things that you can do, both as an individual and, you know, as part of your community to support Palestinian business development.
And there's also facilitators. So all the teams that are facilitators, can you guys go to your table and help facilitate?
Does anyone have, I forgot to, actually, I had offered to do a question and answer. Do people want to do question and answer, or should we do groups and then question and answer?
At this point,
You might get more questions after.
Okay, so let's do, yeah, we can do question and answer at the end. And I'll sort of make my way around. Thank you very much.
Alina, do you have a table to size because we'd love for you to visit all of us.
Choose somebody from their table to at least get up and say something, whether it's an answer to one of the questions or if it's just an interesting idea. There was a very interesting idea at this table. I will not steal their thunder, but I hope they share it with the rest of the group. So everybody just, you know, choose somebody from your table and, you know, keep it kind of brief because we want to get everybody the chance to say something and we want to get everybody out of here by 8:45 too. So I'm going to start with this table.
Oh, good. You know, I found these questions very difficult.
Oh, too hard, okay.
We actually have a microphone, so you can speak, darling.
Oh, she's coming.
Thank you.
I found these questions very difficult. And we got, partially due to my talking, we got
Sidetrack, that's fine.
sidetracked a
Maybe
lot.
just share something in the group that you found
Well,
interesting.
I think the best answers we came up with were the third question. And directing people to local business startup groups. And I think that they would be better off to start with young people who are more not as risk averse.
Sure.
And women who are, you know, we have, I don't know, I think we are sometimes, don't care about making money as much as men.
Sure.
And we have a more, there's no way I can put this, it doesn't sound prejudiced or anyway, we have bigger hearts and we're more magnanimous and maybe more philanthropic, shall we say.
Sure, yeah, service oriented. Thank you very much. Do you guys just want to, we just kind of like sneak around the room. You guys want to go next?
The table selected parts of two questions to answer. Question one, we looked at the last portion of that. What ideas do you have to help Palestinian businesses deal with these issues that Laila was describing earlier? And one answer is to build a commercial traffic only roadway or bridge into Jordan, mostly one way, so it does not harm security, or you know, lend itself to perhaps you know, drawing the attention of Israeli security. And start with commercial only, and it could broaden into something that becomes more a two-way street, literally a two-way street. Also, a question came up: what's the quality of communication and translation at the checkpoints? Sometimes there's a great bottleneck because people cannot speak the same language, and Israeli soldiers don't speak Arabic, so that's a problem. One of the answers to question 3, where can we find U.S. entrepreneurs willing to consider taking on opening a new market for Palestinian products and services? We thought of college campuses, particularly the student unions at Berkeley and UWM, where there seems to be a more liberal attitude, and college campuses in general have more open liberal views on internationalism than other organizations that have older members. And also a second group would be faith-based organizations like churches, synagogues, and mosques, which could introduce new products, and then put those products into the hands of so many people who attend functions in those organizations, and we may actually become lucky in getting that product into the hand of somebody who can actually market it. Nobody here at my table is in that line of work, so it's difficult to imagine. I can't give it just to my neighbor, but my neighbor might taste it, and my neighbor might give it to somebody else and say, hey, this is pretty good. I had it in the centerpiece of this bar mitzvah, and I think we can, market the heck out of it. So anyway, there we go. That's it.
Thank you, those were really creative and wonderful.
Who's at this table here? Yeah.
You don't have to have an answer to one of the questions. You can really just share anything interesting that came out of your conversation. Yeah,
Well,
I'm not, I am very disappointed you didn't solve the Palestinian-Israeli conflict in that 55 minutes.
No, we did. We haven't spoken.
True, okay, I'm open-minded.
It's rather humorous that I am speaking for our table, but I am. Happily. We talked about all three questions, but only very briefly, because we also talked about the difficult situation of the occupying forces and the way they try to make things more difficult for the businesses. But that's the way it is, and so what can we do? I think your suggestions were excellent. We did not come up with any positive suggestions. We simply talked about the differences between an American business or even a business in some other country outside of the Middle East and countries there, unless they have oil, maybe cotton. Is there anything else I can pass on from our table? We had two representatives from perhaps your mosque here, two young men from Pakistani parents, and they took some of our time very valuably for us to understand what the perspective of people who are not Caucasian Christians, for instance, as most of us at this table were. So we thank them for talking with us and helping us.
Great. Come on, guys, you had a good recommendation at that table. I heard it right as I was leaving.
I guess I was elected to talk. So we pretty much talked about the main thing is just getting the word out about what these businesses have to offer, certain businesses, how much they have to offer to their bottom line, essentially. Because essentially what businesses want is what you can provide for them and how you can affect or help their bottom line. So so pretty much that's what we talked about. And what else did we say?
What was the really good idea about bringing the show to Palestine? Come on, guys, I liked it.
Oh yeah. We talked about bringing the show Shark Tank.
Shark Tank West Bank.
I mean that's a way of getting the word out.
I think that's a good one. Yeah.
There you go.
We did talk about two other things that were a little more specific. One was product adaptation, so that if you have a confectionery company that's able to sort of be a little bit more agile, you might be able to make product that can compete with sort of existing products that are more popular in the American market than something that's very kind of novelty and exotic like the almond. So obviously that's something. And then also something that probably most people already recognize, that the fair trade branding is really important, because there's a growing niche market in this country, especially among millennials and other folks, among sort of socially conscious consumers, to sort of buy goods and products that actually help people in their own economic struggles around the world. So a quality product that actually, this is cutting out, quality product that actually also you feel good about spending your money for it. And that's obviously a leverage point in the market that shouldn't be lost.
Yeah. I will say,
Yeah, well.
I worked in...
And then we thought if Palestinians made MAGA hats, the Trump administration might grease the wheels.
Oh, good idea, I just want to say too that with fair trade, I mean, it is a very good point because fair trade as an industry really has grown. So when I moved there in 2003, there were, you know, no entities doing fair trade in Palestine, and now there's a number of them, olive oil and otherwise, crafts, clothes, you know, other food items as well. So it really is an industry that Palestinians realized they could make a profit in and they could compete in. And the growth of that has been really good to see.
So we talked about the challenges that Palestinian businesses face over and above what American businesses face. And we even talked a bit about Gaza and the service organizations. And when you're a US-based business and you're looking to outsource some service, you want to do your due diligence. You want to, you know, go over, see what they're doing, hear what they're doing, make sure that you all have alignment of expectations. And when you can't even get into an area to have those conversations, it's really difficult to have the trust.
Right.
And then you've also got a situation that you've got a Palestine doesn't have a solid set of legal criteria, etc. And so you're, again, a U.S. business and you want to have some comfort that if there is a dispute, there's a place to, you know, address that dispute.
Sure.
And here's a culture that has, well, we're going to talk it out, we're going to work, it's your grocery store example.
Right.
So one of the solutions we thought was, you know, just much better education on the issues with U.S. businesses that want to engage and, you know, make sure they understand before they ever start that there are some barriers and here's how we can work around them. And also for the Palestinian businesses to understand that there are expectations of international trading partners and they might not be able to do it, but get all those issues out in the open
from the beginning.
Formally at the very beginning, so there's just not, you don't go down a path and then find you're just not comfortable proceeding.
Sure.
So much with just clarity of expectations way ahead of time.
Thank you, those are great.
Yeah, we addressed the first question, and that was the what additional challenges do the Palestinian businesses face? Obviously, getting the product, physical product, out, in and out of the region.
Yeah.
And any business over here or anywhere else in the world wants a product delivered on time, reliably. And how do you address that? Right now, given the conditions, what we said was, why not concentrate on services? Don't rely on getting a product across the border. Call centers, customer service, software. My understanding is more and more people are acquiring the technical skills.
Very true.
Software. I mean, there are countries, for example, India has built a huge industry just supporting, these kind of services. So concentrate on that. Granted, that region has great, agricultural products, but concentrate on the software services, things that don't need border crossing.
Yeah.
And for some items, like where you have to get the product out physically, we're thinking, how do you make lemonade out of lemons that are thrown at you? So why not, partner with Israelis. Take a smaller percentage of, the cut.
Sure.
The conditions that they are facing, got to make the most of it. So partner with the Israelis and see, make a compelling business case to where they'll be willing to partner with you. Hopefully they will help in getting the goods and services out. Goods out of the region.
Yeah. So I want to thank, that was really great, thank you. I want to thank everybody for engaging with these questions and coming up with some ideas. I do think, there has been a lot of focus on the development of the IT sector in Palestine because it doesn't require the movement of goods, which is so hard to do sometimes. And I think that's a great industry to continue to foster and develop within, within Palestine. And there's a lot of movement, Palestinian Americans who are very successful here in the U.S. who are involved in IT, who now want to go back and figure out how can they reinvest that knowledge and that information and support the development of similar industries in Palestine. So I think there is a lot of movement with IT, and I think that is an industry that does leave a lot of hope for Palestinians because it doesn't require the movement of goods. So I want to end on a positive note. So I want to talk about the things that you can all do. So I hope I've encouraged you, given you some things to think about. So I really want to encourage you again to sign up for our email list. Again, I promise we don't inundate you with emails. Sometimes I sign up for an email list and then I have to quickly unsubscribe because they're sending me way too many emails. We're not like that, I promise. And most of our emails are either updates on companies that we've asked for your help for in the past and sort of what's happened with them and what success stories, when we have them, we like to share them. And then specific requests on helping certain industries, certain companies with a very specific request. So please do go to our website and sign up for that. Seek out Palestinian products in your local Arab markets. So I have seen, we don't have an Arab market in Palestine because we have a very small Arab community. I mean in Madison, I'm sorry, because we have a very small Arab community, but we have a Turkish market and they have sometimes Palestinian dates from Jericho. I've seen Palestinian za'atar from, I don't know where, somewhere in Ramallah, I think. You can also go to Whole Foods and find Palestinian olive oil, fair trade olive oil. And a lot of your local fair trade stores you will find have Palestinian crafts as well. The embroidery, the olive wood carvings, ceramics, olive oil soap is another really popular one, and it's a wonderful soap to use. All of those things I mentioned make great holiday gifts for your family and friends. So seek out Palestinian products because if stores see that their Palestinian products are selling, they will order more. They will be encouraged to introduce more Palestinian products. So it really does make a difference. And I really think that how we spend our money matters. And I always try and really be careful about how I spend my money and whenever possible spend it in ways that's meaningful to me and maybe meaningful to somebody else as well. You can order lots of Palestinian goods from online. There's a Palestinian store called Palestine Online Store. It was started by a Palestinian American who's based in Austin, Texas. He has lots of really wonderful Palestinian products you can order. There's also an organization called Handmade in Palestine, and they sell a lot of things. It ships to you straight from Palestine. You can find them on Instagram. And the money from that organization actually goes to support the first, it's like a nature reserve in Ramallah that kids can come to, Arboretum, so that's what I'm looking for, the first Arboretum in the Ramallah area and in the West Bank in general. There's also the Bethlehem Fair Trade Artisans. You can check out, I mentioned them a couple times, you can check out their website. They have a lot of really great, wonderful products. And you can make orders directly through their website, and you can also see where their products are available in the U.S., which fair trade stores that they sell to. And there's also a really great organization called PalBox. So she'll put together a box of you, and it's all little gifts and handmade things from Palestine. Starting in February, you'll be able to get these wonderful little chocolate dates also in this PalBox. So that's another great gift item. If you own a company, it could be something you give your employees as an end of the year gift or whatever the situation may be. You could get it for all your teachers at school or all of your professors at university. There's lots of ways to offer these nice gifts. And then last but not least, I always like to encourage people to contact the representatives and tell them that they support and want Palestinians to be able to do business freely with America. Sometimes I feel like I'm calling my representatives a lot these days, but it does make a difference. They do track those numbers. And so if they start hearing from people on a regular basis that people want Palestinians to be able to do business, they take that information to heart, and it does affect things in the future. So it's about numbers, and I guarantee you that the other side is calling a lot more than we are. So we need to make our voices heard. We need to let people know that we want Palestinians to be able to do business with Americans. And if you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them now, but I think, Dilnaz, we're at time.
So could you just stay around a little bit longer if you
have
questions?
Yeah, if people want to ask me questions at the end, that's fine. I think You guys were going to do a little wrap up? Okay, so sorry I talked too long and there's not enough
thank
questions.
you.
But if people want to ask you later, you're
Thank you so much to Ed and Laila for coming here, taking time out. Really just your passion is driving your mission, the work that you do, and thank you for sharing that passion with us. Also, it's interesting, Rick said a story about like the first time you came to the mosque, and I always share this story. The first time I ever went to a synagogue, I was about 27 years old, and I called my mom, and I was like, Mom, I'm going to a synagogue, and she's like, oh my God, why are you doing that? She was so worried for me, and I was like, no, I got invited to a bar mitzvah, I want to go. And I went, you know, I was a little nervous, scared, but it was like such a great learning experience. Then I was probably like 28 or 29, I got invited to something at a church, and I was calling my mom, I'm like, Mom, guess what, I'm going to a church. She's like, oh my God, what is wrong? I went, I was a little uncomfortable the first time, but I would like to say now, being the Interfaith and Outreach Committee Chair, I am literally, tomorrow night we're going to a Presbyterian church. Last night I was at Sukkot Shalom, so like, and today I'm in a mosque, so I'm a very interfaith person. And I do want to give a big shout out to my parents, because my parents never went anywhere other than a mosque or their Muslim family's home, and they're going to a Presbyterian church with me tomorrow, and then they're going to do something else. It's being comfortable, being uncomfortable, right? So we are all pushing ourselves, and we need to keep doing that. So thank you so much for coming out today, and if this is your first time, we hope to see you again, and if you'd like a tour, please walk around. But it is really important to push ourselves out of our comfort zone, and it doesn't matter what age, the first time you do something, but continue to do it, and next time bring a friend with you as well. I loved how Laila started talking about what ideas and images we have of Palestinians. Anyone want to just shout out? We talked about some great things like resiliency, Gaza geeks, hospitality, hardworking. What other adjectives or verbs or nouns do you think about with Palestinians now after Laila's presentation? Just shout it out.
Oppression.
Oppression? That still kind of sits with us.
Oh, they're obviously
Business orientation.
Business oriented entrepreneurs.
Entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Brave.
Brave. Brave. Thank you. Let's share these stories when we get back, you know, tomorrow at work or at school or, you know, at the dinner table. These are really important stories for us to change the single narrative. There's a single narrative that's carried on about, you know, a lot of people in this world, and we need to change that. So I'm going to have Rick do a closing reflection, a spiritual reflection for us. So thank you so much, Rick, for bringing us all together and having us here tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dilnaz. Thank you, Dilnaz. Thank you, Laila. And I'm going to share a reflection that I actually shared here a month ago. Few people were here for that, but I think it's about the value of diversity. And I think as I look around the room tonight at a very diverse crowd, it makes me feel good. And we have more than 50 folks in the room tonight, I counted. And it feels good to hear people share and to feel comfortable sharing. And you know, diversity is really the richness in life that comes from being around people who are different from us. We as a community have taken to the word coexistence. You know, you see the coexistence bumper stickers with the religious symbols spelling the word out. And my wish is for all of us is that I think we need to strive to go beyond coexistence and go to something that I call co-appreciation. And co-appreciation is not just living side by side, but it's rejoicing in the richness of getting to know people of other religions, other races, other cultures, and other nationalities. So my wish for all of us tonight is that we've all taken a good step in co-appreciation, and that should be something that we take with us and continue. So thank you all so much for being here this evening. Laila and Ed are around to answer questions afterwards. Me and Darling and Ryan are happy to answer hands-a-piece questions. And Dilnaz and her team are happy to answer questions about MCC and when you can get that mosque tour. So thank you all. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.